lifted it. So fair enough, people need to go out. But there are still quite a number of people who can afford to stay at home, who are paid well enough to be able to work from home, to be able to stock up supplies so that they don't have to go out. Such people I would advise, please, let's not crowd the streets. For those who live day to day, which is the majority of our population, the advice I would give is, okay, apply social distancing as much as you can. We have so no large gatherings. If Sanwo-Olu can prevail on NURTW, let them stop parking buses full of people. On my way here, I saw some parked buses.
Yes, they're already violating.
That's a problem.
But he gave regulations regarding that. He said
but it's not.
Nigeria 50% capacity.
Nigeria is chock full of laws and rules and regulations. It's about enforcement. We need to be able to enforce these things. Otherwise, we'll end up having a disaster on our hands. We are not out of the woods yet, despite the fact that Sanwo-Olu has really done well. We are not out of the woods, and you could have done good work. Just one simple slip towards the end and undo everything, and that is what we need to be careful about.
Thank you very much, Atta. To contribute, send your contributions to WhatsApp 0809-444-0981. We're live on YouTube, streaming live. You can find it on youtube.com/smooth981fm Lagos. Tweet at smooth981fm with the hashtag freshly pressed 981. You can also leave a comment on my Instagram live, Valentino, and I'll share it as we go along. This next story that caught my interest, Chata, from Premium Times on coronavirus. There's been rumors that banks have been laying off staff. A certain bank, there was room, but CBN has decided to step in, or in the policy down that banks should stay on for laying off staff. Should they have the right to, implement policies that would, just reflect the bank decisions?
I saw the CBN circular yesterday, and the only thing I could say was no, mba, nehi. I mean, this is not civil service work. This is bank work, private sector. They are set up not as a social service, but for profits. We have a lot of evidence that indicates that the CBN compelled the bank to donate to make the bumper donations that they announced at the beginning of the crisis. Now, if it's true that they were compelled, it affects their bottom line. That's just the harsh reality, and they have to cut costs somewhere. End of story. We cannot keep pretending that everything is perfect when things are not, because eventually it will still bite us somewhere. Now you have a situation where the CBN is forcing banks to retain staff, essentially. Of course, none of the banks will have the balls to contest with that decision. But the valve, they will let the pressure come out somewhere, and it may well be bank charges on customers. I don't know where it will be, but that is one of the options that they may look at. Now, the thing that the CBN should be looking at really is practical stuff, such as ending casualization, because that's one way that the banks have really become looking for the word here. The banks have really started to use that as a loophole. Instead of employing full-time staff, they employ a lot of contract staff. The CBN should look into ending that practice, one. Number two, any termination should be done within the confines of the law, should be of existing labor laws and all of that. You can't, you really can't legislate for what private companies do in order to remain profitable, so long as what they do is legal. And the funny thing is that even the civil service is about to see mass layoffs as we implement the Oronsaye report. So what is the CBN going to do?
What can they actually when that happens?
So the CBN circular yesterday was loud on rhetoric, short of practical actions. We should, every other person that I know is looking at ways to give palliatives to players within its economy. In Nigeria, considering that the FIRS issued one statement about the week back, then you now add this. It looks like instead they're assaulting us from all sides.
Very interesting analysis. Thank you, Chata, for that. Let's quickly jump to the efforts of our security personnel across the country. They've put reports about the number of people that have been arrested, cars that have been impounded in their clampdown during this lockdown. It just got lifted today temporarily. The Lagos State, in particular, Lagos State Command on Sunday said over 2,300 violators were arrested in the state during the lockdown, while thousands of vehicles and motorcycles were impounded. I mean, this with so many things that we saw in the past 2, 3 weeks have
4 weeks
shown, or
actually.
4 weeks, yes, have shown that
Five.
we have selective ways of, observing lockdowns,
Yeah, this
directly
is
obeying instructions.
that's a bit of. I mean, my first when I read the announcement, my first impulse was to tell that to the geese,
Mm.
because I know of a lot of people who, even for interstate travel, were still around. All they had to there was someone who in one of my village meetings. Oh, my village meeting we do it on Zoom now.
Ah,
Yeah,
serious? That's so interesting.
yeah. There was one guy who talked about how he got to the village.
Mm.
Listen, he simply hired a policeman, 30,000. That one sat in the front seat of his car and they drove from Lagos.
Standard.
So when you have those kind of things, then it tells me that, and this is one of the big problems with law enforcement in Nigeria. Laws exist for one set of people, exist that do not exist for the other set of people, which means that those people for which it exists do everything in order to get themselves to the place where it doesn't exist for them. That is it. That is basically an ingredient for anarchy. Now, it is right to have picked up people or arrested people, stopped people during the lockdown for violating it. But to just tell us that to just announce that without having those people follow some form of due process,
Mm.
get a court hearing or whatever is the punishment for it, that's wrong. It needs to have been done. Most importantly, it needs to have been done uniformly, and all the evidence suggests that it was not done uniformly. That's where I have a problem.
Mm. Let's move away briefly from coronavirus for a second, but not before taking all these messages we have on WhatsApp. WhatsApp number is 0809 444 somebody Escobar says, mistake. Are you saying that's to the lockdown or something else? Well, let me know in your comments. Sharon says, I do not know, Sha. Is it that the government has negotiated that with the COVID-19 not affect people during the hours that have been people have been allowed to move around? The lockdown should not be lifted yet, is what he thinks. Emeka from Ejibo says, "Good morning, guys. I agree 100% with Cheta. We'll begin to see spikes in figures on state levels, and any RTW is one group that may make mistakes or make nonsense of our plans." Emeka from Ejibo, thank you. Dele Owolowo says, "Good morning. The hard, bitter truth is that the government cannot afford to keep us all at home unproductively and forced to choose the lesser of two evils. Keep hundreds of lives healthy or millions of livelihoods economically. Stay healthy all." That's what Dele says. Tunji says, yes, in hindsight, the lockdown came too early. With the loud clamor at the till end of March for the federal government, it was damned if you do and damned if you don't. Thank you. Ifeanyi from Ibas says, good morning, gentlemen. Does this partial easing of the lockdown really matter? This is because when some go out to earn income and others aren't allowed, to me, it looks somehow. MI says, the delicate line between commerce and morality. It's a tough call for employers right now. The pandemic does not just cost lives, it costs livelihoods. And damn Larry, thank you for your message as well. As Victor says, CBN forcing banks to retain staff without looking at the sustainability and profitability of the banks is simply absurd. The same CBN is the one that, without enforcing that will enforce unrealistic policies. Okay, LDRs and CRRs is what you meant to say. Are we running a socialist economy or free market economy?
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
no, Victor has asked the right question.
Mm.
We're running a free market economy or running a socialist economy. The thing is, we don't even have the ingredients to run a socialist economy. As in, the ingredients simply don't exist here. For a start, to run a proper socialist economy, you need to know how many you are. We don't know how many people live in the borders of Nigeria. You need to be able to get all of them into the banking system effectively. You need to be able to tax them. Those things don't exist right now.
Mm.
So Nigeria has to be free market, and that means less government interventions.
Talking about government interventions, we've seen the failure on many levels of the palliatives reaching the hands of many Nigerians, many impoverished Nigerians that have been even their lives have been made worse in this period. The federal government alone does not have all the answers. They've been trying though. To see how they could mitigate the economic consequences, but they are real. The economic consequences that is. It has made us to now in hindsight, so start looking at policies that would help us save more money, especially how much money we've been bleeding out from the overspending in budgets, annual budgets that keep coming out from ministries, departments, and agencies. The Oronsaye report, for one, was one that was greeted with a lot of cheer by many people,
including me.
including you, exactly. Cheta, you've been talking about this Oronsaye report and how it is very important for the federal government to implement it. That conversation has come up now. Why and why is it so relevant
The
at this
Oronsaye
time?
report conversation came up. I mean, we should be brutally frank about what's happened. Nigeria is broke. I've been in short. Nigeria is not broke. I've been saying it for years. Nigeria is not broke. We're bankrupt. There's a difference. Now we finally met a genuine black swan event, COVID-19, which means that other places we may have been able to borrow money from simply don't. They're no longer options. They don't exist. So we finally did what um, I have been saying for years that we should do, which is we approach the International Monetary Fund, and they've graciously granted us a loan of $3.4 billion.
Mm.
Mhm. And now the thing is, IMF loans typically come with restructuring demands. You have to restructure things before IMF will give you money. But this one came as a rapid financial instrument, so it's not everything. Not all the harsh conditions the IMF usually gives. Okay. Um, Number one, we are there's a moratorium of 3 years and 3 months before we start to pay back. Number two, we must pay back within 5 years. Number three, it's 1.1% interest, so it's a pretty low interest loan.
Mm.
However, there are conditions, one of which is rationalizing cutting government waste, and that is why they finally went back to dust up the Oronsaye report. Now, it's important to point out that the Oronsaye report was issued in 2012,
Mm.
but then the government now considered a committee who issued the white paper in 2014. So implementation of the Oronsaye report should have started about 2014, but you have to understand the context. It would have been politically inexpedient for the previous government to start implementing in 2014.
That's the Jonathan government.
The Jonathan government,
Okay.
because there was an election,
Mm.
and such a bitter pill is something that there is no democratically elected government that will start implementing such a bitter pill just before an election.
Mm. So it would affect them.
The people who should have begun to implement immediately was the Buhari government, and the Joda reports actually recommended implementing parts of the Oronsaye report, but it was completely disregarded. Instead, what happened was that in the 5 years since Buhari came to power,
Mm.
we've had at least 121 extra ministries, departments, and agencies created. So the bloat has even increased more. Now we have to start rationalizing. So, as an example, the Buhari government created a ministry for humanitarian affairs just a few months ago. Now, this new ministry essentially duplicates the efforts of NEMA, who Buhari just sacked the DG
GG, yeah.
and replaced.
Mm.
What do we do? Well, you see, part of the problem with implementing the Oronsaye report is that we're not even talking of the DNA of the waste. The I think it's section 147 of our constitution that specifies that every state must have a minister. That already introduces bloat by default. So we need to cut that out. Otherwise, we will still be back here again during good times. The UK, as an example, has just 23 cabinet ministers. Of these 23 cabinet ministers, five of them, Julian Smith, the Minister of Northern Ireland, Alistair Jack, the Minister of Scotland, Simon Hart, the Minister of Wales, um, Evans Park, the Minister for the House of Lords, and then James Cleverly, the Minister without portfolio. They don't take pay. They are just there because of for political reasons. You can see their portfolios. They are there to represent certain interests. The Trump cabinet in the US has just 16 members. So what are we doing with minimum of 36?
I mean, beyond just the comparison, Chata, we know it's very clear that one of the major reasons why this Oronsaye report is very important, which, by the way, is also it has a different name as regarded as the rationalization, committee that has been set up, Presidential Committee on Restructuring and Rationalization of Federal Government Parastatals. We have over about 541 parastatals, 50 out of which lack any governing laws.
No, we had 541
Now it's
parastatals
more.
when the Oronsaye reports
Was
was written
Mm,
in 2012.
mm,
That was 8 years ago.
mm.
Now, under the presidency alone, we have at least 700 MDAs under the presidency alone. Now, the part of the problem is this very lazy attitude of using political appointments or jobs as political compensation. The best example of that is Cross River State right now. That's by far the best example, or maybe I think I'm using the wrong language, the worst example. Ayade has come in and as this, and he has at least 5,000 essays right now, at the very least 5,000 essays, because he just creates them willy nilly. But what Ayade has done is what other is what other politicians have been doing, but on steroids. So other politicians in different parts of the country use the creation of positions or creation of positions and then employing people to fill those positions, basically as political compensation. That has to stop. And I think I welcome the financial crisis. I've said this is not the first time I will say it on this station. I've been praying that Nigeria hits a financial crisis because it's the only way we'll finally have sense. You cannot run a country like this. I would end by Nigeria exists as an example of how not to run a country. The late Pius Adesomi said that, and I'll keep quoting that.
But we know these problems, Cheta. Nigeria is one country that I know that we talk about the problems more than the solution because we see the problems are more realistic, and we keep talking about them. And year in year out, we still talk about the same things. Experts say that this Oronsaye report, as lofty as it may seem, would come with a lot of criticisms. First of all, they said if it's even passed to the National Assembly for them to deliberate on it to pass it, it will take 12 to 24 months before it sees the light of day. Is this ever possible? As much as we know how good it is.
Given the fact that the National Assembly itself is a bastion of waste, they wouldn't want to fast track it. However, now and this you see, so this is where lack of foresight always becomes a problem. Nigeria will have to cut the size of governments. Nigeria will have to restructure. These are things we cannot avoid those things, especially as our population keeps exploding. The key issue is whether we will do it in an orderly fashion, which is looking down, projecting down and saying, oh, this is where it's coming. So let us work right now to mitigate it. And we go back to the Bible, book of Genesis. When Joseph the dreamer dreamt, and then the Pharaoh said, okay, you have said that in 7 years' time there will be a famine. Let us plan for it.
They started preparing.
And they started preparing. So it's either that option, or we wait until our hands are tied, which is what it is now with the fact that we had to go to IMF. Because bear in mind that Nigeria has spent the last 40 years demonizing the IMF. Now we are forced to go to them. Of course, the IMF is like the Iron Bank of Bravos in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Very cold-hearted, indifferent institution. Okay,
it is what it is.
You've been abusing us. We don't have a problem with that. But our conditions still remain the same. You want a loan, do this. So another thing that they've promised is that fuel subsidy will not come back.
What do you know of this new man that's been appointed, or in NEMA? Yes, the Director General of National Emergency Management Agency, Engineer Mustafa Y. Maihaja, has been sacked, according to this report from the Vanguard. It says tenure was 4-year tenure, supposed to
expire
next year April, and then these new person that's stepping in. What are your thoughts regarding this?
I'm not so much interested as because I don't think it will last. with this, I mean, there was going to be some rationalization. I think that NEMA is one of the organizations that will be on chopping block. So I think he's kind of irrelevant. My own issue is the reason that was given for letting this old guy go, corruption, sorts of all sorts of controversies.
Mhm.
Then you just simply sack him, and that's why is EFCC, ICPC. Oh, by the way, EFCC and ICPC should be
Should be
merged, and half of
merged.
their staff should be sacked.
Mm.
Um, we're talking of the Oronsaye report now, so
Right.
why can't we say it?
Right.
So EFCC, ICPC, or do I say EFCC slash ICPC?
Mm.
In short, both of them should be collapsed into the police, as a department in the police. So the police should be there to meet this guy, to say, guy, how far? All the corruption that happened under you, oh yeah, come and answer.
Mm.
If you don't do that, then you are giving incentive for what you are, the incentive that you are giving is for the next person to simply come and do his own on a faster scale before he gets sacked. There needs to be consequences for actions. So for me, the sacking and the replacement is irrelevant. It's what do you do about the guy that you sacked, given the reasons for which you sacked him.
So are you by that implying that AVM Muhammadu Al Haji Mohammed is no different from the sacked DG?
I'm not implying anything.
Okay.
I'm just saying that he will not. I don't
Make
believe
much
that he
difference.
will make much of a difference.
Okay.
As long as the underlying structure is faulty,
Mm.
it's everything is just musical chairs.
I like that. All right, let's take a few messages on WhatsApp before we continue. Freshly Pressed is live on Smooth 98.1. Ike Baba from Apapa says, on the guidelines for mode of transportation, I bet you it won't work. Some of these commuters actually have no places in particular as destination, not for any work. Rather, just to leave home to see if manna can fall from heaven. Commercial bus operators are what kind of people again? Is the police officers or are the police officers meant to check them? Then these classes of commuters with no destination in particular. What I am seeing, he says, in all of this is that there will be an implosion of the pandemic during this period. Watch out, the regulations will have no cause effect. And Ejiro says, or cause and effect, Ejiro says, hi Chata and Valentine, about the 60% capacity operation of 50 actually, of public transport buses. I'm very sad to inform you that all the buses driving past me now are operating at 100% capacity. Everybody's squeezed at the back, especially.
I
Sad.
don't know what age Euro is talking about. I would say 110% capacity. I saw, as I was coming here, I saw buses with the conductor hanging outside. That's
Right.
110%.
I mean, normally what we see that we describe as 100% is
It's
technically
it's
200%.
100,
Yeah,
I mean,
when you have 6 people sitting on one chair and dragging. Ikeba Iba says, on the duplication of the government agencies and bodies, it's simple. The executive compensates their own through such ways. And again, employment rate in Nigeria is very alarming. Remember, many of those so compensated had no clear-cut occupations about or before their appointments. This one here from Abdul Salam from Agege says the facility from the IMF is not a loan per se, but a drawdown of our savings with them. It is a loan.
it is a loan. See,
Yes, it is, yeah.
let's see, because this is, you see, this is where this is the problem that we have when we run government by propaganda and banter. It is a loan. End of story. The IMF has said so. The finance minister confirmed on Channels TV on Saturday evening. It is a loan. Period.
The fact that we contribute to the IMF does not.
The contribution is membership dues, as it were,
That's right.
to enable us to be able to access such loans when the time comes. Period. If we don't contribute to the IMF when the time comes, such as it has come,
We
now,
can't draw.
we will not be able to access any loan. From
That's
them.
right. And that's how it works. Now, if I from Iba is reminding you, Chata, they say, remember the 36 ministers equally have innumerable aides who do nothing and draw salaries and
This
allowances?
is not the same story that we're talking about.
Is
My
that-
former, because one of the things that I try to do, my former senator, based on where I live, so the way Nigeria is, people will tell me that my senator is Victor Moboshi, but the place I pay my taxes, my senator right now is Peperito. The former senator, Peperito, I've tried to call him twice. I have his number. The guy cuts the call every time. He's not interested in being a senator. He was one that came to propose one nonsense on the floor of the Senate. But that's besides the point. The senator before him, Benga Ashafa, I used to reach out. His research person did not understand the concept of research, but he was doing research. So clearly that job was given as political compensation. That's part of the problem. we treat this thing as if it's bazaar for sharing. We don't talk about productivity at all. So let us, since we're a country that refuses to learn, let us face the financial crisis. See, let me give a prediction. This IMF money, they will still share 'em. And then the funny thing is, for a country of Nigeria's size, $3.4 billion is 4 months. If we manage to stretch it somehow, 6 months of cover. So in about 4 to 6 months, if oil prices remain the same or Nigeria is unable to sell, and bear in mind that 70% of Nigeria's March cargoes for oil are unsold. April is slightly higher. If we're unable to sell, we're unable to produce, we have to shorten our production and all of that stuff. In 6 months' time, we'll be having this conversation again.
What's your take on the cases, the fatalities in Kano? Last week, 2 weeks ago, they were crying foul that all the reports that we're getting is not coronavirus, is something.
Again,
But now this report already reads clearly that 80% of Kano coronavirus samples test positive.
again, it is what happens when you run government by banter and propaganda. 2 weeks ago, somebody reported that the NCDC lab in Kano had been shut down because it was contaminated. Immediately, the spokesman to the Kano state governor went on the offensive, called the person all sorts of names. A few days later, the NCDC confirmed that it was true. When people began to drop dead in and around Kano, and the reports came out that the cemeteries were full, were filling up at an unusual rate. We were told that, oh, this, then, and the whole thing was ended with, don't talk about it, yours your business, we can't, you are not from here. Unfortunately, we're in a federation, even though it's a pseudo federation. What happens in Kano has an effect in Lagos, because Kano is one bus ride away.
Remember, just 2 weeks ago, they moved the Almajiris to Kaduna.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
We are talking of even as of
last week,
now,
we heard that 50 of them are tested positive.
Yes. So this is the problem. We are all angry with China because they have been very dishonest about the way they've handled this thing. China is 19 hours away by air or something like that. But yet, what China's cock-up has affected us. So how much more Kano, that is 2 hours away by air? So these things matter. We need to learn to come to equity with clean hands. We need to be honest. And that's Nigeria's most fundamental problem. We're a dishonest country. Until we change that, we will keep going around and around in this crooked circle.
I want to thank you especially, Cheta, for your contributions to the show, Freshly Pressed 91. Continue this conversation on social media, on Twitter precisely at Smooth91FM, with that hashtag Freshly Pressed 91. And to reach out to Cheta on that platform, please type CHXTA. That's his handle. That's CHXTA. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't been on air for a week. Wow. Thank you, Lagos. And let's continue this conversation on social media. And next, we talk sports inside of the locker room. Stay with us on Smooth.
Headlines. The stories.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining.
In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.